You ever have one of those days where the world just feels off? Like even the sunlight in the lobby is trying too hard to be cheerful, and you're moving through it all with a kind of tired hope that maybe, just maybe, today will surprise you? That was me, Elena Brooks, a nurse of 10 years, walking through the glass and steel maze of Kent Medical, badge clipped to my scrub top, shoes squeaking just a little on the polished floors. The place looked pristine, but underneath, it was a mess. Everyone knew it, but nobody wanted to talk about it. Budget cuts, new management, and a storm of whispered rumors about layoffs and restructuring. The whole hospital felt tense, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the axe to drop. But on that Monday, what stopped me cold wasn't a memo. It was an old man sitting by himself, pale as the tile, one hand clutching his chest, eyes wide and lost like he'd just landed in a place he didn't recognize. You know what I mean? Some folks, you see them and instantly know something's wrong. I set my clipboard down and crouched beside him, gloves already on, heart pounding but my voice steady. "Sir, are you all right?" He blinked up at me, like I was part of a dream he'd rather not be having. "Howard," he managed, breath shallow, face slick with sweat. It was the kind of moment where the rest of the world fades, and there's just you, the patient, and whatever you have in your pockets. I called in a code blue, adrenaline kicking in when nobody answered, short-staffed, again, thank you administration, so I stayed. I made him chew aspirin, checked his pulse, kept talking, calming him, even though I could feel panic nipping at the edges of my mind. Behind the glass wall, the new director, Thomas Crane, watched it all unfold like he was at a movie. No urgency, no reaction, just arms crossed, eyes cold. Minutes dragged. Paramedics finally burst in, and as they lifted Howard onto the stretcher, he squeezed my hand, so weak, but so grateful, whispering, "You're the only one who came." I smiled for him, because that's what nurses do, and then, when the chaos faded, I went back to the staff room and checked my phone. One message. HR, immediate termination. Breach of protocol, unauthorized medical intervention, effective immediately. It felt like getting hit and not realizing you're bleeding until you look down and see the stain spreading. 10 years gone. No warning, no apology, just the cold tap of a delete key. I didn't cry, didn't scream, just stared at myself in the locker room mirror, trying to remember when doing the right thing became the wrong move. What I didn't know, couldn't have known, was that the man I'd saved was Howard Kent, the very founder of the hospital chain, a man whose name was carved in brass near the entrance and whose fortune paid for every inch of the place. 3 days of silence passed. No job, no income, just that clinical HR email echoing in my head, until my phone rang again. This time a voice so calm it almost made me angry. "Miss Brooks, this is Catherine, personal assistant to Mr. Howard Kent. He'd like to meet with you." I thought it was a prank. Why would the owner care? But an hour later, I was in the back of a sedan, heart racing, staring up at the sleek lines of Kent Medical Headquarters. Security met me at the door, like I was expected, which, honestly, felt strange after being tossed out like yesterday's news. Up an elevator, through marble halls, and into a sunlit office where Howard Kent sat in a wheelchair by the window, looking a little less fragile than before, but still carrying the weight of a man who'd seen his life dangle by a thread. Beside him, yep, you guessed it, stood Thomas Crane, his face pale, nervous. Howard gestured me forward. "Nurse Brooks, come in." I managed to keep my voice steady. "Mr. Kent, how are you feeling?" He smiled, really smiled. "Alive, thanks to you." Then he turned on Crane, voice suddenly sharp. "She saved my life while you and half your staff stood still. Then you fired her." Thomas stammered, tried to justify himself, but Howard cut him off. "No excuses, just cold, hard truth. You didn't know who I was. That's why I trust you. You helped because it was right, not because of a paycheck or a title. That's the kind of nurse I want leading the next chapter of this hospital." I just stood there, overwhelmed, trying to process it all. Howard slid a folder across the table. Inside, A job offer that felt surreal. Director of Compassionate Clinical Programs. Triple my old salary. Full authority to recruit, to build a team of nurses who actually cared, not just about policies, but about people. And a plaque. The Elena Brooks Center for Compassionate Care. I'll admit, tears welled up in my eyes then. How could they not? Behind me, Thomas was told, in no uncertain terms, to submit his resignation. And right there, in that moment, something shifted, not just for me, but for the whole hospital. Howard leaned over, handed me the plaque, and said, "Saving a life should never cost you yours." That hit me deep. The world can be so cold, you know? But sometimes, the right people notice. Sometimes, the fight pays off. Months later, when the new wing opened, I stood beside Howard as patients, families, and staff filled the hallways. News cameras flashed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt proud, really proud, to wear those blue scrubs. My speech was simple, because compassion isn't complicated. It's not about paychecks or titles. It's about seeing someone in pain and refusing to walk away. When the cameras turned off, Howard leaned in, voice gentle but certain. "I built this place with numbers, Elena. You gave it heart. Now, when you walk the hall outside the new wing, there's a photo. Me, kneeling beside Howard that first day, my hand on his, and through the glass, Thomas Crane caught between indifference and the moment everything began to change. Folks come from all over, pointing at that picture, asking about the story, wondering what happened to the nurse who lost her job for doing the right thing and found a whole new calling instead. And every time I see someone pausing there, I think, yeah, sometimes the system's broken, sometimes it'll chew you up and spit you out, but there are moments, real, beautiful moments, when standing up for what's right flips the whole script. So let me ask you, where do you draw the line between rules and doing what you know in your gut is right? Ever been there yourself, stuck between the two, wondering if anyone would back you up if you took a stand? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear your stories about courage, about kindness, about those wild moments where you choose to be more than just a bystander. Let's talk about what really matters, and maybe, just maybe, start a conversation that changes a little piece of the world. You'd think that after all that, the headline news, the new hospital wing, the photo on the wall with my name in bronze, life would finally settle down, you know? Maybe I'd just slip into this director's chair, run my new division, and things would finally make sense. But if you've ever tried to change an old system from the inside, you know it doesn't let go that easy. The truth is, the day the Elena Brooks Center for Compassionate Care opened, my world only got bigger, louder, harder. Suddenly, I was the one people looked at for answers. Every nurse who'd ever been told to stay quiet, every patient who felt like a number, every tired tech, every janitor who'd seen the worst of bureaucracy. They found their way to my door, hoping I could do something more than just listen. You want to hear about pressure? Try walking through the break room your first week as a director and seeing folks, some old friends, some who never gave you the time of day. Get quiet the second you walk in. Not hostile, just waiting, testing, wondering if the compassionate care was just a headline or if I'd actually fight for them when it counted. The first challenge came sooner than I expected. It was a Thursday, rain hammering the windows, the whole city gray and restless. That morning, a new face showed up in the waiting room. Jamie, a young nurse just out of school, sitting stiffly with her hands jammed into her jacket pockets, clearly nervous. She didn't even look up when I called her name, just kept staring at the tile, like she was weighing whether to run or stay. When she finally spoke, it all came spilling out. How she'd been written up for excessive empathy, how she'd sat by a dying patient's bedside past her shift, comforting the family because the doctor never came. HR told her she'd breached professional distance, that magic phrase hospital lawyers love when they're scared of real feelings. I could see the old fear in her eyes, the same one I'd felt not so long ago, wondering if being human would cost her a job. "I just couldn't leave them alone," she said, voice barely above a whisper. You know what I did? I smiled. Not the polished, PR smile. They'd tried to teach me that already, but I'm terrible at it. No, I gave her a real one. Jamie, that's exactly the kind of nurse we need here. The ones who care too much, not too little. And right then, it hit me. This wasn't about policies or new paint on the walls. It was about fighting for a culture that lets people care out loud, even if it means bending a rule or two. I promised her she wasn't alone, not anymore. But you know how systems work, they fight back. A week later, an anonymous letter landed on my desk, accusing our new outreach clinic of favoritism and misuse of resources. Suddenly, I was called into a meeting with the board, rows of faces I'd only seen in donor galas and LinkedIn headshots. Some of them, I realized, didn't care about medicine. They cared about numbers, press coverage, and keeping things neat. They grilled me on protocols, on efficiency metrics, on whether all this touchy-feely compassion was really cost-effective. Let me back up a sec. It's easy to get cynical when you see how slow big systems move. But sometimes, the universe throws you a curveball just to remind you why you started. That same afternoon, as I sat in my office going over another round of compliance reports, Howard Kent himself rolled in. No appointment, no warning, just the quiet dignity of a man who built something real and refuses to see it rot. "Elena, I hear they're giving you trouble," he said, eyes twinkling. I nodded. "The board's worried compassion doesn't pay the bills." He laughed, a rough, honest sound. "You know what's expensive? Lawsuits. Burnout. Nurses quitting because nobody lets them care. You keep going. I've got your back." That meant the world to me, but the real test wasn't the boardroom. It was what happened next. An outbreak in the pediatric wing, a virus moving faster than anyone expected, patients stacking up, parents frantic. My team was exhausted, nurses pulling double, even triple shifts, tempers fraying, hope running thin. But instead of cracking, something remarkable happened. Jamie, the same new nurse who almost quit, volunteered to stay overnight, organizing story hours for scared kids, making up bedtime songs, holding hands through fevers. Other nurses followed. Doctors who'd always kept their distance started showing up in the playroom after rounds. Even janitors brought little treats, colorful balloons, stickers, to brighten the halls. Word spread. Parents, staff, even the local news. Compassion became contagious. Not the manufactured kind, but real, messy, sometimes chaotic kindness that makes a hospital feel like a lifeline, not a factory. For the first time in years, I watched people rediscover why they came to medicine in the first place. Of course, the backlash came too. Board members worried about overtime, whispers that Brooks is too soft, rumors flying that we were setting a dangerous precedent. But when one of the sickest kids, a little boy named Liam, finally went home healthy, his mom wrote an open letter to the hospital. "Your staff didn't just save my son's life. They saved his spirit. We felt loved here." That letter hit the news, and suddenly, all those efficiency metrics seemed a lot less important. And you know what's funny? Thomas Crane, the former director who fired me, he reached out. Not to apologize, but to ask if we had room for him in our team. "You were right, Elena," he said, voice low. "The rules never saved anyone." I told him maybe everyone deserves a second chance, but only if they're willing to get their hands dirty for something that matters. Now, months later, the Elena Brooks Center isn't just a name. It's a way of working, sometimes noisy, sometimes messy, but always, always rooted in empathy. I see Jamie leading her own team. I see Howard, frilier now but proud, knowing his legacy is safe. I see old rivals, now allies, fighting for what's right instead of just what's easy. So what do you think? Is it possible to change a system from the inside? Or does it always come down to individuals willing to risk everything for what's right? Have you ever had to fight for your values in a place that wanted you to shut up and play along? Let's talk about it. Drop your stories below about compassion, courage, or the times you refused to back down. Maybe together, we'll inspire the next person to take a stand, because in the end, that's how real change starts, one act of stubborn kindness at a time.